Hey everybody, hope everyone is well. It is a really nice day here in Northwest Indiana on the south side of Lake Michigan. So I've got my windows kind of open. Hopefully the microphone in these earbuds is good enough to where that doesn't become a thing. So I've got a little time as I'm driving to an appointment, and I thought I'd like to weigh in a little bit on what was billed as a debate that happened recently, and it was nothing of the kind. It was just an awful argument that nothing was accomplished. Nothing was resolved. And the thing is, it made both sides. If somebody who wasn't familiar with any of these issues stumbled onto that debate, they would look at the whole thing as just ridiculous. And I'm talking about the alleged debate, the debacle on No More News. True News is another story altogether. On No More News, I think Adam actually titled it Blood Sport Debate. Well, I don't know, man. That's kind of problem number one. It's a serious issue, what's being alleged. So for anybody who's not familiar, recently, Christopher John Bjerknes, who is an author, who has written a few very lengthy books, mostly on Einstein and his Zionism and communism and plagiarism and so on and so forth. And the thing that interested me in him having a new book out was not so much the subject. Now this is it's revisionist in spirit and content. So in this book, he's claiming that Hitler was a Zionist and communist. It's not a new claim. People have been claiming this for some time. There was another guy actually who had done a movie on this. Geez, it was like 15 years ago already? What was his name? Michael, I want to remember it. Couldn't have been Condit, was it? But he had an interview on that DVD he was selling of that movie with Bjerknes. All right, but look, that issue, that's not what interested me. I would rather leave revisionist topics like that to revisionists. And so apparently a debate was staged on Adam Green's BitChute channel between Christopher John Bjerknes and Dennis Wise. Now, as far as creativity, I suppose, I've watched Dennis's The Greatest Story Never Told, and I think it was decent. I mean, like, a lot of people who don't know those things would find that maybe a good platform to glean a lot of information from. Now, I saw it just right about the time he put it out. And at that time, I was I still didn't know what to think of all of this, you know. So I took it with a few grains of salt, and it was a little bit difficult at that time to get through. It was a lot. It was many hours of mostly footage, a lot of edited footage, kind of clipped, put together, and other facts. And then he did the secret Masonic victory of World War II. I believe that's the title. It's kind of a long title. Now, I tried watching that, and I think I got 5-6 episodes maybe through it. And by the time I was that far in, I was so sick of the complete Catholic bias that he was putting to all of this, that it just became difficult to watch at a certain point. And this is a narrative that a lot of the people on Radio Albion, formerly Radio Arian, push. They very, very much push people in the direction of Catholicism. You know, even though the main guy, Sven, I mean, he tips his hat frequently to CI, which is, again, that is a system of dealing with the Bible I don't subscribe to. You know, because you can recognize who the Israelites were by biblical descriptions and close study, and you can see who their descendants are today because of prophecy, and then just paying attention to things sociologically. Just because you can do that does not mean that you are suddenly Christian identity or British Israelism. Okay, it's the same old tired trick where if you recognize one truth, you get thrown in, or you get steered to a whole set of other beliefs and teachings you don't agree with. And I don't. I'm not CI. Do not link me up with CI, because I've had a few CI people on my channel for interviews. It does not make me CI either. I've had a number of different people on. It doesn't make me believe what they believe. It just means I had them on. And I don't endorse them. So I've been interested for a little while in CJB, and when I first got interested in him was when he was doing his interviews on the Einstein book, Einstein the plagiarist. Maybe it was called The Plagiarist and Zionist, I'm not sure. And the reason for that is Christopher John Bjerknes, like a great many other purported historical revisionists and white nationalists, let's see, there's him, there's Brandon Martinez, there's Jan Lamprecht with Alex Linder, there is the personalities over at Renegade, and the list goes on. All right, there are folks at Radio Albion, there are folks at Eurofolk Radio who claim to be something, well, let's just say revisionists or, you know, white nationalists. And what they do is they break down people's confidence in the veracity of the biblical narrative by oftentimes, and Christopher John Bjerknes is guilty of doing this as much as anyone, equating the Bible to Jewish propaganda. saying that the Bible is a Jewish book, making utterly false claims like that the Jews follow Torah. That's why I'm interested in him and have gone through channels to try to arrange a debate with him, not on historical revisionism. I'd be very glad to let other people handle that. But on his claims on the Bible. So we'll see how that goes. But when I sent out that email, and I had to send it through channels, I made it really clear that if I was to participate in something with him, it would need to be a structured debate with a clearly defined structure that was known and agreed upon beforehand. Thus, okay, here's the structure. There will be a 15-minute introduction. There will be this long of rebuttals. And the thing is, debate structures can be varied depending on the format and who's moderating or the institution who hosts it and so on and so forth. But they all have a basic structure. Oftentimes there is a section where the debaters are allowed to directly ask questions to and answer questions from, and this sort of thing. Those sorts of debates where they stay to a structured format that is known beforehand so that they can craft their point of view to that structure. Those are the most productive. So anything that's not structured, I'm not going to participate in. The other thing I said was when debates are not structured, they tend to descend into arguments, oftentimes ad hominems. Those happen. And I don't want that to happen. I'm not interested in having an argument with Bjerknes or anyone else. I'm interested in a debate, a scholarly debate concerning his claims about the Bible. That's what I'm interested in. And you know, the thing is, with any debate, a structured debate, the parties involved, the debate is scheduled a good deal beforehand. This gives the parties involved time to acquaint themselves with one another's position and their material, what material they've produced, if any, and so on and so forth. Now, with the debate like that on the Bible, he would be debating basically the affirmative, and the affirmative would be that the Bible is essentially Jewish propaganda, that the Torah is a Jewish holy book, and that the Bible, both the Torah and the prophets, or all of the Old Testament, is just full of Jewish supremacism and basically a model for them taking over the world. That's essentially his position. So he would be like arguing the affirmative, and I would be arguing the negative against that point. So he doesn't really need to get to know my material per se, because I'm not arguing the affirmative. He is. So at least that gives us time. It gives him time to take what the argument's going to be and tighten it up, put it into the format that he knows the debate's going to be in, and I have the time to comb through his material and do the same thing. That's a debate. That is productive. But what I saw on No More News, that was anything but productive. There was no moderation whatsoever. And, you take an issue like this, where at least one side is passionate, and I'm not saying both sides weren't, I'm saying if at least one side is passionate about their position, and it's obvious that at least one side in that thing that happened between Dennis Wise and Christopher John Bjerknes, at least one side was very passionate about it. It could descend into bad territory because there's passions and emotions, and nobody had really prepared. I don't know why Dennis agreed to do it. I really don't, to be honest. And I don't necessarily have anything negative to say per se about Bjerknes's position on this, because I am not into demagoguery, idolatry. I'm not into putting Hitler on a pedestal. Whatever good things he did, good. Whatever bad things he did, we need to know, and we need to learn from them. But I think that there's a whole movement that's been going on for some time, and I believe this movement's purpose has been to build a straw man out of Hitler, World War II, the events of World War II, the Nazis, Germany, so on and so forth. And especially when it comes to Hitler. Part of the problem with that is when all of these events, just like in that book that I'm reading right now, by Bradbury, the book is called The Myth of German Villainy, but he has spent an inordinate amount of time just on Hitler. I far more enjoyed a lot of the history that he was covering around Hitler, besides Hitler, before. And that's part of the problem. And that's part of the straw man. If Hitler lost his life as a result of the war and died in Berlin, then that's one sacrifice that he chose to make consciously. But this wasn't about Hitler. This wasn't about Hitler. Kaufman didn't write the book Hitler Must Perish. The Jews were not going on about Hitler until Hitler assumed power. They were going on about Germany. They were positioning Germany for takedown and destruction long before Hitler, long before National Socialists. So turning this into something about Hitler is a straw man in and of itself. And I believe that for some time, people masquerading as revisionists have been building a straw man or straw men around Hitler. And now I've seen it in Bjerknes, as I mentioned some years ago, this other guy, and recently Ben Nun was on True News saying about the same kind of line. Well, obviously, and here's the thing, folks, whether there's a correlation or not, and I think there is, so many people are waking up to international Jewry. Many of them, they still can't get their heads fully around that, so they have to stop off at Zionism. A lot of people just stay there, but that's at least where people who are more regular Joes can at least get to comfortably. An ideology, right? Zionism. There's so many people that are becoming aware of that. And I think this is the point where they start to burn that straw man. And they start to push off all of this guilt that has rightfully been accumulated by international Jewry, sometimes in the form of Zionism, sometimes in the form of communism, sometimes in the form of feminism, atheism, you name it. And now they're pushing it off on Hitler. Again, it's like their go-to. He gets to be like their go-to demon king. And so, if this is entirely organic, Bjerknes releasing this book, which I imagine is probably a gigantic book like others he's released, I think it's just very strange that it's happening now. And I wonder how many other people we will hear pulling out this sort of line of attack that Hitler was a Zionist and a communist. Now, I've heard a few different points of view on this. It troubles me that a lot of the points that I've heard being made so far are kind of they're sort of myopic. That bothers me when that happens, because those myopic points, they're not taking into consideration the big picture. You always got to look at the big picture. You can't see anything in small points. I took down some notes when I was listening to it, and then I gave up because, it didn't take that long for it to descend into really, like I said, bad territory. I don't recall who drew first blood. I think it was Bjerknes by calling Wise a propagandist. And then he started just straight up calling him a liar, like a straight liar and an ignoramus. And the ad hominems were flowing from Bjerknes like a fountain. And whether he was upset or not, why? Because Wise was interrupting him? He was interrupting Wise. There was no innocent party there. And Adam was not moderating. There was no moderation. There was time to time he would break in on them. No structure, no moderation. And even if you have the best intentions, that can just degenerate into chaos. So, all right, here's some of the things, right? And unless I'm wrong, is Bjerknes still pushing that there was some sort of Holocaust that took place? Is he actually one of the guys still pushing that? Because Ben Nun does, by the way. Ben Nun does. And about every Jew out there who claims to be a Christian does. Of the big leaders, that Michael Brown does, Jacob Prosh does. They don't even mention some really, really damning facts But all right, that aside. So now he talked about the fact that the Nazis barred all of these newspapers from looking into Hitler's past. That somehow the Nazis completely walled off all publications from looking into Hitler's past, and like his records were sealed and nobody could find out anything about his past. Well, first thing is, I did not hear citations. I heard very few citations. He cited Irving once, but didn't give specifics as far as book, chapter, page, or anything. And Irving is not an entirely reliable source, although he has released a number of very informative books because his research was more original than the circular crowd. He has gone back on things that he has said. He has had to correct himself down the road. And, you know, moreover, he is a blazing egotist. I just would say that he's not the best source. And he quoted one other, a woman by the name of Bridget Heyman from Hitler's Vienna, who made this claim too. Well, you know, not knowing a lot about that, I would just think that there are questions concerning what publications and why, what time period it was that happened, if it did, and I would want to see pretty solid sources. And I'm going to have to assume that he cited those very solid sources in that book of his. But there are a lot of questions that could be asked about something like that, even if it were shown through good, solid, original sources that actually occurred. Another thing is this, well, what was it? Oh, it was his, that was it. All right, so Dennis brought up the fact that the Nazis, they were very anti-Mason. Now, this I know because I've read original documents from the Nazis, from Nazi writers, propagandists, you know, Nazi thinkers, and not just National Socialists, but a number of German nationalists leading up to that time in history were saying the same kinds of things about Freemasonry and their involvement with Jewry. Now, Bjerknes will say it just like it is, and Dennis Wise will too. There was some kind of argument between them because there was a misunderstanding. It seemed like Dennis was not listening or not hearing questions that Christopher was putting to him, and that seemed to be one of the problems with all the confusion, besides the fact that Dennis wasn't familiar with his work. You just don't take a debate if you're not familiar with somebody's work. Not if they're arguing the affirmative and you're arguing the negative. You got to be familiar with your work so that you can argue the negative. But anyways, it was this a point that Bjerknes made when Dennis said, well, he was rabidly, him and the National Socialists were rabidly against Freemasonry, and he closed down all the Masonic lodges. When his point was that this Germar Schacht was Hitler's economic advisor, was a Mason, and that he was the one who had put together the deals with the Zionist Jewish bankers to re-stimulate the economy. Now, the first thing is, I had thought that enough revisionists out there had refuted pretty steadfastly this idea that it was Zionist bankers in any way who re-stimulated the German economy. However, let's just say that his main economic advisor was this Germar Schacht, and that he was a Mason. Well, there's a lot of questions that could surround that. First off, documentation. His documentation as a Mason, in what lodge? I mean, because they tend to keep secrets. So that's the funny thing about Masonry, is it typically has to be a preponderance of evidence. And the funny thing also about Masonry is, it appears that Masonry had existed at a certain time in Europe and at different places in Europe in one form, and many of the people believed they were working towards one thing, even when they were in fact working towards the ends and goals of Jews. So that's one thing. Another thing is, Hitler had a lot of people around him that weren't quite exactly on the same page as him. That I would have to say probably any leader is kind of burdened with. A perfect example, since Bjerknes likes to cite the Bible so much, and King David. King David's chief captain of his army was a guy who was responsible for a lot of sort of underhanded things, and they often very much disagreed on things. And, you know, I can't speak for King David, but I would assume that he stayed his captain because, for one, the word that he gave when he wanted to take the city of David, he said, whoever goes up, there was a sort of gutter leading to the outside and gets us into this city, the first one in will be the captain of my army. So there was that, and maybe some other things, but he didn't agree with him philosophically. Moreover, was Schacht a practicing Mason. Bjerknes mentions these secret lodges. Don't you know about these secret lodges? Well, if they were secret lodges, then they were secret. That's like the whole point of being underground, is that the state can't necessarily prove that they are functioning or that anything is going on. So was he still an overtly active Mason? That's another thing. Okay, these are just points. I mean, again, looking at these myopic details can sometimes distract you from the bigger picture. And that kind of leads me to a lot of details that he and other people that make these similar claims bring up. Well, it just seems that it would be the wisest thing to look at all of the outside forces that could have been acting on Hitler, on Germany, on his party, what sort of dynamics within the party were putting pressures on him, and so on and so forth. Again, I'm not trying to paint Hitler as a saint. I want to see him warts and all. If he was a Zionist and a communist that was perpetrating one of the greatest frauds of the 20th century, I want to know about it. Absolutely. However, this isn't something that's new, and I do have to agree with Carolyn Yeager, who said that one of the biggest driving forces to making these claims is that if you can, basically anything and everything has been claimed and published about Hitler to sort of muddy up the waters and to denigrate either his name, the aims of National Socialists and the Nazis, and so on and so forth. Almost everything and anything you could imagine has been said about him to smear his name. And if you get people who are woke to even what the Zionists are about politically, as opposed to just international Jewry, like at the sort of Henry Ford so on level, and they believe these arguments, it is going to turn them off to finding out more about what was going on. They might just really throw their hands up and say, just in disgust, this is a Bolshevik, communist, Jewish tactic to saturate an idea with so many different points of view, all of those points of view being agents. Because what you do is, and their whole purpose is to essentially drive people insane because they don't know what to believe. So I would be very cautious, even when these arguments seem to be very strong. There are a lot of people who have written on this from both points of view. There is a decent amount of material out there to be looked into, and I would hope that if Bjerknes has another debate, that it will be structured so that we get something out of it, because I don't think anybody got anything out of that. I downvoted it. I thought it was just so bad and represented these issues so badly because it was just, it was a blood sport. And that's not what intellectual debate should be, because nobody wins. Everybody loses. I've got to go because I'm at my appointment destination. One thing I do want to bring up real quick, what I just thought was bizarre, was at the beginning of this video, Adam Green keeps saying we, like he co-authored this book with Bjerknes or something. I'm not kidding you. Listen to it for yourself. You can say, he literally says, we made the title provocative, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. What's the deal? The we, Adam? You and your group of special insiders that are pushing this point of view? When you use language like that, that bothers me. That makes me think that you definitely have an agenda here. And it's not just digging down to the core of truth. So that's my 2 cents on that debacle. I really do hope actual debates occur in the future. If no one else were willing to moderate a debate, make sure that it's structured and articulate and intelligent, I would do it. It's no more than an hour or 2 of my time to make sure that something like that goes off. I certainly hope if all of these people, like Adam, like Bjerknes, like Wise, and so many others, who may often make claims like, we are this community, truther, we're about the truth, then I would hope very much that they would present things in a format that was far more productive for the people listening and experiencing, so that they could come away from that being able to make a very informed, rational, and intelligent decision. So with that, I'm out. I hope everybody is very well. See you next time.